Thank you so much for listening to Paper Girl, a podcast for creatives and book lovers across Tulsa. My name is Melodie Coulter. I'm the host and co-owner of Meadow Market Books and More in Tulsa. And today I am here with Paloma Lopez, who is the co-founder of Tulsa's newest upcoming bookstore, Palomino Books and Music.
Hello.
Hello, Paloma. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you are busy. You guys open up officially on the 1st. But you've got a little sneak peek coming up.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell Tulsa a little bit about what they can expect?
Yeah. Well, my name is Paloma. I'm one half of Palomino Books and Music. My husband and I, Agali Sigmaki, who's a little more, well known around Tulsa as a musician, started on this venture together. We took a leap, in kind of some uncertain times, and Palomino Books and Music was born, and we're excited to be offering just a really wide selection of books, but also vinyl and CDs, and really focusing on Tulsa. It's funny, we joke that folks might ask, like, what's your niche? And we have a couple, but really it's like, it's our friends, people we know.
That feels very like a kindred spirit, first of all, to Witty Books, which occupied the space before and Tulsa and before you. And but also akin to like a little bit of the energy we've been curating here, but on a bigger scale, and of course expanding into music. So what's the timeline on this, from like thinking about it to like taking the leap on the space?
It was quicker than I thought it would be, honestly. I think a little background, both of us are Cherokee language educators. And I think we were both having thoughts about like, how could we do something creative and helpful for the community, including the language, but also some other issues that we're passionate about in a way that's outside of the building that we work in, essentially. What can we do on our own? And he definitely took more of the music and songwriting route. But I was like, what could we build, essentially? Something that I could kind of get involved in, because I am not musically inclined. I'm not going to sing on the album or anything. But I had a lot of ideas, and I just started messing around with the idea of opening a storefront. I got a little taste of the publishing world when I published my first children's book, Popo de Cholo, last August. And so it started to be something that was growing in the back of my mind about like, this might be something fun I could do, and a space where I can be creative and kind of facilitate community and relationships and give it my own zest, and really we saw that space, and I'm going to sound silly, but I loved the peach trim on the door. It was really cute, and it was kind of, I think in my visions of like the aesthetics and the colors, I would include, if, I ever had my own shop, that was one of them, that kind of like peach, bright orange sunset vibe.
There's like always a little sign.
Yes.
There's always a little something.
Exactly. Like something that tells you, this might be the right move. And I just kind of, I have my family, I live with my husband and our two little boys, and as my mom and dad as well. And they've been really helpful and big supporters of us. And when I kind of approached them about this idea, they really lit a fire under me, I think, as well, and kind of just explained to me, like, you just have to take a leap sometimes, and I went ahead and put out a letter of intent, or I sent one to the broker and the owner. I think at that point I was like, hey, this might be too good to be true. Like, I have this great idea, but I can also be a little impulsive, knowing myself. And if it comes back a no, then I know that, like, hey, this is going to take more time. You know what I mean? It might not happen in 6 months, but it was a yes. And so that was my sign to just jump off that diving board and start swimming because it was go time,
I love that. Yeah, it feels so very like, it's percolated in my mind, and like, my background in all of this is from the library side of things. And but it would be really nice to be able to like access a different audience and be able to have a little bit more agency over who I platform, and
Yes.
be able to like set my hours and be a little freer, like, coming from the queer community. It's hard to like queer up a library collection without like setting off people who think that you're trying to do that for evil reasons.
Yeah.
Like I just want like people who exist to be visible on my shelves. And so like I get the freedom to choose that kind of thing here. But then like giving the owner of the space a call and like, hey, I'd like to do this. And then knowing like, okay, if it's a no, or if we look over the business plan and it's not time to do this, then it's not time to do this. And, the timing just works out so beautifully.
Yes.
Like what's meant for you comes. And so I love like that little sign of like the peach trim.
The peach trim on the door. Yeah.
Like really lovely visuals and aesthetics. And so like I'm excited to see. I think, the constant chorus of customers here is Tulsa needs more bookstores. Tulsa needs more bookstores. And when Whitty closed, we were very like, okay, maybe we need to get our mobile bookshop on the road because now Kendall-Whittier doesn't have a bookstore. And, it felt a little bit silly opening a bookstore like a block from one, but the space worked out for us. And so I'm glad to see that Kendall-Whittier is still getting a bookshop.
Yeah.
And in a really good area. You're surrounded by really wonderful Tulsa staples and new Tulsa icons, and just like a really great creative space. And so I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And, we're like, I've had one other like bookseller on the podcast so far. And so like kind of what's been surprising you about like opening up a bookstore in Tulsa?
Oh, everything. I don't have the background in library science. You know what I mean? So things like curation really came from, my personal opinions and likes, thankfully my husband's aunt actually works in a library out of Northwest Arkansas. So I do use, a lot of like the resources that I do have. And I think, not necessarily connected so much as being a bookstore specifically, but just being a business owner in general. And I it's almost easier and harder than I imagined it would be. Especially like with this space, like I thought it was going to be like fighting tooth and nail to convince people that like we deserve that spot. Or, it was just going to be no's. And because sometimes, you have an idea and you think it's a good one, but you know that other people might not receive it that way. And, but if you believe in it, and you fight tooth and nail enough that you can make it happen. But I just thought it would be that much harder, but it really did just fall into place. And it kind of puts you on edge. Maybe it's just like my own personal anxiety, but it's like, what's going to happen,
Well, and I don't know what the conversation was with the broker and the owner at that space. It's not very different, like ownership structures of the spaces. But like with ours, it's just like one guy.
Yeah, literally.
In the building for like 40 years. And, and he was entertaining other interested lessees, but he's like, what do you want to do with the space? And I was like, a bookstore. He's like, well, I don't really know anything about the book selling world, but one of the people wanted to do an insurance agency. And I just felt like that wasn't going to bring people in.
Yeah.
It's such a unique building. I want people to be in it. And I was like, and he's like, so here's what I want. Is that something you can live with? And like, I was like, are you kidding me? You believe in me? I had, when I called him, I had updated our business plan because I had a business plan written out for when it was going to be a mobile bookstore. And so when we scheduled the tour, I was like, all right, time to hunker down and adjust this business plan, especially because we're selling the camper. So either way, I'm going to have to adjust it. So let's do it as if we have this space. And I'd gone through all of that and like the justifications and like projections financially. And then he was like, you want to open a bookstore? Cool.
Go for it.
That's it. I didn't have to. I made a PowerPoint. Do you want to watch it anyway?
I can email it to you. Yeah.
And so I definitely agree with that. Like the things that you thought were going to be barriers aren't. And I think that's a testament to like how essential bookstores are, and like this idea of sharing art and sharing creative work, even when it feels like it's a little fluff, a little extra, icing on the cake of a community. It ends up being something that people are like, no, I believe in this and I want to help you make it happen. And then there are harder things where you're like, I don't know, like we're having like trouble with getting books from one of the university presses.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this hard? Because it didn't seem like it was going to be hard when I was talking with the rep, but suddenly I'm like 4 different people
down the line,
and having to like fight tooth and nail. I'm like, don't y'all want to sell a book?
Yeah,
I want to buy it.
Isn't that your goal? No, and I mean, I think it's funny because it's like I feel like our conversation happened very similar between the broker and the owner of the building, and I remember when we were on our way to go meet him at the space for the first time and go see it all together. Because before we had just been talking to the broker who, had been really helpful. But he was like, okay, now you meet the owner. And he was just like, no, yeah, we believe in what you want to do. And we think it's a good addition to the community and fits. And that was it. And so, yeah, it is like that feeling of like, okay, is what's next, And I think honestly, the hardest thing for me thus far has been, trying to reel myself in because I'm excited and I want to do so many things with the space, especially because we do have that like performance element. My mind is going in a bunch of directions of we can do this for Native American Heritage Month, and we can do this and have this showcase, and wanting to be active in all these ways, and also realizing like at the end of the day you have to sit down and like file your taxes quarterly and have to do this. And that has been the thing that it hasn't been it's been daunting, like the financial aspect and making sure that I'm or that we're compliant, but it's been I don't want to say like easier than I thought, but it's been something that I'm impressed with myself that I could manage. Because I think before having my own business, I thought it would be like really difficult to understand, and I would make all these mistakes, and I'm sure I will, but I think reaching out to folks, and honestly, this is a piece of advice that actually I received from Angeline Ripley I'd read, and she said, just ask, questions and show up with a good attitude. And even if you think it's a silly question, like people are so receptive when you just ask, and don't act like what I mean?
And like in that, like mistakes are shockingly like not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like I filed the first quarter, wrong. I filed them with my SSN instead of my EIN, which I was like, I don't think that's an issue. And then I got a letter and they were like, hey, you owe this much. And I was like, I do recognize that number. So I called them up. I was like, hey, I think I might have filed something wrong. And like they were like, oh yeah. And I was like, if I need to like repay that, I guess I would like to not. And they were like, okay, here, we found it. You're all good. And I'm like, oh. Okay. And now I know. And I had 2 accounts on like the employer commission. And I was like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
So here's where you need to be, sweetheart. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Or like
just like call and be like very hat in hand. Look, I made a boo-boo. I'm not sure how to fix it. Like, oh yeah. Because you could have just ignored that and then made it a real big issue.
No, I mean, I think it's just like not, and this is just for life in general. I think it's just like not having an ego about it. You know what I mean? Like, even though like on the surface, I might be a business owner, I might people might think I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. I'm figuring it out every day. You know what I mean? And I'm sure in 10 years, I'm still going to be missing something, or people ask me, well, how do you do this? And I'm like, honestly, I don't even know. It just happened.
I Google it.
Yeah. I forget how to use QuickBooks every so often, and I have to remember how to add that person or take off this person or,
Yeah. And it's just like, the reality is that we can't all be business students.
Mm-mm.
And like in some cases that might not be the best trajectory, or like, it's not accessible. Like a similar conversation in the library world of like the accessibility of the title librarian and who should have it, and should it be limited to like people with an MLIS. So I'm like, well, yeah, I had a master's degree, but there was a customer service associate who learned how to be a librarian just because she's been at that branch for 20 years.
Yeah.
And like that to me doesn't make her less of a librarian. It doesn't make me more of a librarian that I have a degree, because she knows this collection. She knows the community better than I do. Like, we're two sides of the same coin. Really, of just like where we come at this title from. And so that being a business owner is not about knowing everything. And definitely like, I love that you're seeking advice from other business owners. I'm like, I had a conversation today with a student who's studying business at TCC. She's like, I want to talk to a local business owner and just kind of pick your brain. And she's like, the biggest advice that you could give somebody in business, and I was like, especially at this level, the other local businesses aren't your competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially like in the book world. Like, I was like, I'm meeting with Paloma, and like Kelly and I are still good friends, and like Peace of Mind comes and says hello, and like the coffee shops work with each other, and we all take care of each other. And it's just like, at the end of the day, our dollars are traveling between each other's businesses anyway. Like, I go and make deposits and then go spend my money at all of the other bookstores, or I go and buy coffee here. The $20 bill that somebody used to buy a book here, that's a staff member at Tyler Thrasher's studio. I then take to Tyler Thrasher's studio and buy glowing flowers. And then Tyler uses that and, buys his kid ice cream, and like that $20 is staying in the community.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're at the end of the day, we're all here to support each other and take care of each other.
Exactly.
And that's like a big humility thing that I think sometimes when you're looking very macro, you're like, everybody who's in my industry is my competitor. It's like, not quite.
Yeah. You hope that someone, even if it's another bookstore or another coffee shop or something, opens up next door that has a vision, that cares. Because, also just on a practical level, like that's going to create more foot traffic. If you have a gap in between your bookstore and, for me, it's like, here's my bookstore and there's, Tyler Thrasher's on the corner. You know what I mean? We have Joe and June, we have mixed use space, Tulsa. Thank goodness they're right there, because, everyone can just keep going down the line. You know what I mean? And if they're coming this way, they'll end up, at us.
And we all have something a little different. And that was the cool thing about like the independent bookstore crawl, that like Tulsa really got to see how the Northeast Oklahoma bookstores collaborate. And then to see really how each of them is just like a little different. There's a little something for everybody at each shop. And like the experience you're going to have at Magic City, which is very much like a heavy focus on community literacy. And then you come to like Peace of Mind, which is very metaphysical. You come to Meadow Market, where our big vibe is local authors. And then, just getting a little taste of everybody different. And I'm excited to see, like, especially with your background, like Cherokee education, because we're all trying to curate a diverse collection and diverse offering. But like the same thing with Kayla and Kanara Bookstore, her voice behind these selections is so much more impactful than my voice would be here. But me curating a queer collection is a very big difference. Like, that's not something that she would necessarily be able to pull together. And that's not to say like there are queer books on her shelf just as much as there would be any other shelf, but like understanding the value of having different ownership and different experiences is just like such a cool the whole vibe.
Yeah, and how they all come together, and no, absolutely. And I think it's funny because when we first got our space, I went down and introduced myself mostly to, that I think it'd be like if you walk out of our store and you go to the left. So it's like Tyler and Mixed Use Space and Joe and June. And I went and just talked to folks. I wanted to say hi, and I was excited and chipper, to be there. But also just chatted with them about like, what can we do, with y'all? And Mixed Use Space Tulsa, and also like the Kendall-Whittier Main Street organization have been lovely at just curating different events and collaborative opportunities for Kendall-Whittier and that Main Street specifically. I mean, I feel like Adam at Mixed Use Space is going to be very sick of me because I was even asking him, I was debating asking him about a certain permit that I thought I may or may not have to get. So I was like, just leave me alone, but they're doing our merch as well.
Yeah,
so
our tote bags, which we're like out of right now. And then redirecting our t-shirts, and like I run a nonprofit and they do our t-shirts for our festival, and like, so I don't think you can bug Adam enough. It's being bugged, and if I'm wrong, well, sorry,
Adam, let us know.
You have a reputation for being incredibly helpful, so sorry.
Yeah,
you could be mean.
He's no on the door, and then at our faces. No.
We'll have Mike over at Joe and June come over and paint a big no.
Yeah,
and then a cute little cartoon of you, so that you know that it's about you.
Yeah, you are not allowed in here anymore. But I mean, even a local artist that unfortunately for Tulsa, and I think, I'm hoping, and I think she's doing really incredible things down there, but went to Mexico, and her name is Zuani, and she works a lot with Mixed Use Space Tulsa too. And even I didn't, it's bittersweet, and we both kind of said this when I chatted with her recently, because we're going to do a collaboration on some t-shirts for our shop, like how unfortunate that we didn't connect when she was here in person. But that look at this relationship that we're building now. And I mean, I still, consider her like a local, you know what I mean? She's still a local artist. Cause unfortunately she, had to self-deport, and that's a decision that I think a lot of folks have had to make, unfortunately. For us, you know what I mean? I hope they're living their best lives, wherever. But
we're missing out.
Yeah.
We have our our community is a little less creative for it, and we're giving up something that like makes the United States and makes Tulsa like so special, is the diverse amount of art we have, and how that really like adds vibrance to what's going on here.
Yeah. I'm just lucky that she wanted to and was excited, and same, with Adam and everyone.
She did your logo, right?
Actually, that was my tattoo artist. I have a big vulture on my arm. I used to live in California, and so these other two, I have 3 tattoos. 2 of them are from a woman out in LA, but she did my big vulture, and I was like, hey, what do you think about doing a logo? And even now we've still talked about like playing with it in the future, and what we can do. And so she's awesome. She's actually based out of Dallas, but comes to this area a lot, because I did not know, because my husband's local to Oklahoma. I grew up partly in California and New Mexico. So I think like I've come to Tulsa at a really wonderful time, and the community has really embraced me in a way that like, I think when you live solely on like the West Coast, or sometimes the East Coast, I can speak for the West Coast, you do get that like, what is it? West Coast exceptionalism. You kind of get stuck in that, you know what I mean? And I told we were exploring Louisville the other day, Louisville, Kentucky, because my husband has been touring recently, and I was just sitting there, and it's like, if I had never gotten out of California, like I would have never gotten to know Tulsa, I would have never gotten to know St. Louis and all these really beautiful places and what they have to offer, not only like the state or the country, but really the world, you know what I mean? And I just had this like moment of such gratitude, for Tulsa specifically too, being here. So
it's the kind of place that you like appreciate. I think the one time I felt a little dumpy about it We went up to Kansas City a couple weeks ago, and it was just like a really good weather day, and the bike lanes were in use, and like people were playing with the park, and I was like, oh, this is what Tulsa needs. What if they just moved up to Kansas City and we found like a cute house that was like comparable to ours? And we're like, stop it. And like got home and then had a really wonderful day here. And I was like, no, you're right. Tulsa is amazing. And I love being here. And like the grass is greenest where you water it. So
Yeah.
I like joined a committee to like work on like pedestrian and bike safety in here.
Yeah.
It's like my big issues with Tulsa are like fixable and the part of it. And so Tulsa's just a dope place. And I'm glad you made it here.
Yay! I'm glad to be here. I'm glad Tulsa has been so nice to me thus far and so welcoming. And truly I found it in like the arts and creative communities out here. So
you ended up here because of your husband, right?
yeah, our mom's match made us. Somebody can write a book about that. Yeah.
You know what? I'll steal that
Steal
idea.
that idea.
I'll steal that idea because I'm working on a contemporary romance about me and Jared, and so then I had a different romance idea that I was like, oh, I want to write pretty true to our relationship, but I did have like something with a little bit of like magical realism in it.
Yes.
So I'll stick that.
That is my, especially like Latin American magical realism. I'm Mexican American. And I love that. 100 Years of Solitude is probably like one of my favorite books of all time. I will say I was impressed with the Netflix adaptation that they did. I was like, okay, this is better than I expected. You know what I mean?
You know, it's an up and down time in adaptations.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten spoiled with like things like The Martian and then Project Hail Mary.
Yeah.
And then like the ability of HBO and Netflix to really create these like deep dive adaptations. But then sometimes things go awry, or maybe a series isn't finished yet and they ruin the last season.
And you're like,
Game of Thrones for looking directly at you.
Yeah. And I think the second half is actually coming because it's not finished. The second half is coming out. I think in September. I have to check. I've been too busy, but as you probably know what it's like, you know. But we'll see what happens in the end because maybe I'm starting with like, okay, that wasn't that bad, and I might be disappointed, or I might be really happy with it,
thrilled and surprised. Getting a second season feels like promising.
Yes,
it's just about keeping
the momentum
going.
Yes,
I love that. So your husband's a musician,
yes.
And you know, I'd love to have him talk about himself, but like, you know, maybe share a little bit about how you went from like a bookstore idea to incorporating that musical side, and like how his journey has, you know, connected y'all to Tulsa.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think our journey in that sense really started, I think it was probably back in like 2021 when I think the first talks of doing it was called the Undone Elisk, or the Performers album. It was a compilation of various Cherokee artists doing either their songs or like older songs they had written, or totally new songs written in the Cherokee language or translated. And that was done by Jeremy Charles of Pursuit Films and Brian Horton at Horton Records. And they approached Agali Seed because he was just doing like videos by the creek in a lawn chair, picking on the guitar, some Merle Haggard, you know, that was his thing. And they were like, would you consider this? I think he's kind of come out of this since, you know, really tapping into his creative side. But when we first met, he was like a grumpy little old man. And he was like, no, you know, like I think he was a little more hesitant or unsure, really. But he agreed, and he did that first song. He had that one on the album. And ever since then, it's just kind of been we've been on a very fast trajectory with him since, and we've gotten to connect with a lot of people in the Tulsa community, especially in like the Americana folk and like country scenes. And they've really embraced us. And I think that's where like I'm the worst like passenger seat driver when it comes to stuff like this. Like I love to collaborate and curate, and so him and I are very collaborative in his musical process. Like he's the songwriter and that's all him, but as far as like getting that out into the world, we definitely work together. And I think in doing this bookstore, which is definitely more me, the book side of things, but I always knew that I did want to include him and be able to showcase him and all the people we've met along the way. And then also create space for new people. Because I think for myself, like, I love the Americana scene. I love the folk scene, country. But there's times where it's like, I miss like a little cumbia party. You know what I mean? And where do I find that? And I think I've seen some shows around town, but I would love to, you know, facilitate that if I can. And
I'll be there.
Yes.
I'll be there. My Latin shoes have been collecting dust in my
yeah. Or I've like seen really cool, like, it seems like, you know, like two-stepping is definitely having like its moment right now. We have like the Tulsi two-step, which Agalisi has gotten to perform at a couple times. But in like the world of like Latin and Mexican music, quebradita has like come back full swing. So like, I'm like, we can do a little bit of that too. You know, I think it was also just me wanting to, so much of it has just been like, I like this and I want to see more of it. So I want to make it happen, you know?
I love it.
Yeah. Like with the committee or, the, you know, in the parks and the street safety, sometimes you do it yourself. You know what I mean?
You're like, oh, well, now I've got this platform. I could do that. We do that with the comedy shows that we have here. It's like, we just wanted a place. You know, we're like, oh, we have this bookstore and we're doing that and it's a lot of fun and our friends are all over it. But also like we want a place to perform. Hold on a second. We have a space and we can put chairs in it and have little fun, silly moments with each other. And that's like, and so we bought chairs and
there we go.
And then we did it. And we're like, oh, we can just do whatever
we can just do what we want. Yeah. I think that's the fun part, is just having that, like you said before, that agency and realizing it. And, you know, I can be super impulsive and I tend to just stack my plate with all sorts of stuff. You know, we're parents too. And, you know, we have a bunch of animals at home that need, you know, care, and we're, you know, community members and family members as well. So trying to balance all that, but still throwing as much of that energy as I can into Palomino, what it could be.
Yeah, it's going to be glorious. So I want to shift gears a little bit because you are also an author. It's like the primary guest on Paper Girl that's been authors. So tell me a little bit about the book that you've written.
Yeah, well, I wrote Popo de Cholo when I was pregnant with my first son, and I was very spoiled my first pregnancy. I worked remotely. I got to take lots of naps. I got to eat good. I think that's why he ended up being almost 9 pounds. He was like just shy. He was 8 pounds, 15 ounces. And I think I just had a lot of time to sit and stew on ideas. I also experienced a pretty tragic and like very sudden loss in my family. And so just kind of thinking about the concept of death and the afterlife and what, you know, my ancestors would have thought of it and how they would have processed it and that sort of thing. I also had a hairless, half Chihuahua, half Xoloitzcuintle at the time, who was also a senior dog. And he was definitely my comfort, and how, you know, in Mexico, like, they are very sacred dogs, you know, and have been, you know, very iconic for hundreds of years. And Popo de Cholo was born, and it tells the story of the 9 levels of Mictlan, which is like the Aztec or Mexica underworld, in a way that is digestible for young readers. So like ages 6 to 9. And Abraham Matias did the illustrations. He is also just like a fabulous puppet artist, and so he did paper puppetry for the book. And yeah, so you'll see like there's texture in the grandma's hair in the book because he's using like yarn, and the shadows that he is incredible. Like all of my, hats off to him. Which is, it's funny because I'm going to ALA, the American Library Association conference. Yes, in Chicago at the end of this month. This will be the first time I've ever met him in person. Yeah. So we're going to be receiving he is for illustration, the Pura Belpre Award while we're there. So, yeah.
You're going to have so much fun. ALA, I got to go in 2019. It was in DC. And got to hang when Jason Reynolds was speaking, George Takei was speaking. I got to meet, oh my God, Christopher Robinson, or Christian Robinson. That's embarrassing. And he's like one of my like top 3 illustrators, like incredibly nice guy. And just what you learn there, like, that was 7 years ago. But just the way that conference shifted the trajectory of my life. Like I wouldn't be the librarian I wouldn't be the mom that I am. And definitely wouldn't be the bookstore owner that I am without like having had that experience. The award presentations are really like super fun to learn from too. And then just getting to actually meet the people behind some of the books that you really treasure throughout your life. Like, you're going to have such a good time. I'm so excited. And also very big congratulations to him and to you, because like that awards that's on your book, like not just, it's a joint effort at that point.
It's super exciting. And I think like I just had no idea where Popo, or we just affectionately call it Popo, would take me, and really like take, I think, like my community, you know what I mean? I think that it's just another, because there's so many books that I'm seeing now that I'm grateful for that are just like uplifting like our experiences, whether it be like as Mexicans or people in like the Mexican and Latina like diaspora. So I'm happy that I get to be part of that, especially because like my mom too was growing up, she was a kindergarten teacher and also a multicultural children's book collector. So I had access to so many beautiful books. And now I'm like, oh, this is my book is one my mom definitely would have picked up. And so that was, thinking about that one day, I was like, oh, wow, full circle. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. So do you have anything cooking now? I mean, I know that you're like crazy busy, and I also like took a huge break from writing when I was getting the store ready, but is there anything?
I have, ideas. I think I actually have been playing with the idea of a novel, but really inspired by like my own family history. I think like Isabel Allende, which has her own adaptation out now with House of the Spirits, but that like generational, trauma and almost like just dysfunction, like we all have our own family baggage, reflecting on my own and being like, you know what, that would make a really good book, I've been playing with that and some other children's books ideas, but yeah, it's just like the sitting down, and I have some manuscripts that I just need to play with, I think, a little bit more before I'm ready to send them. I'm hoping ALA, and I think it will kind of reignite that in me, because I do tend to, like with Popo, I had so much time to focus on myself, because I was at home just really largely just alone, thinking, and when I wasn't working on, I was like serving as like a virtual teacher's assistant, because we were still kind of phasing out of being I guess in lockdown, or the remote schooling was still kind of in place for a lot of places. But yeah, just finding the time to do that really, and sit, because I will, like with my husband's music, like I get really excited about it, and I'm like, you should do this. And like when he did his album release, like 2 Octobers ago now, like I was really excited about planning the release and being a part of that. And then whenever I have the time, like I think at that point I'm just exhausted, and that's life, I think everyone gets to that place, but I do want to continue playing with these manuscripts that I have. It's funny because our Karen Boss, who acquired Popo, came from Charlesbridge. She came out to Oklahoma, and I had dinner with her and some other local authors, and everyone chatted, and we were on the sidewalk, and she's just like, she's from the East Coast. She was like, what are you doing? Just, what do you got going on right now? And my good friend, really like mentor, who essentially mentored me through the whole process of Popo, the Xolo, Tracy Sorrell, who's authored lots of...
I love Tracy.
We love Tracy.
I met Tracy at ALA.
Oh, really?
We were on the plane together, and she saw my Tulsa Library t-shirt. And then we were at the ALS pre-conference because she was receiving... she won the Siebert that year. It's like Excellence in Children's Nonfiction. And so she and Frene were coming to receive their award, and I sat on the pre-conference. And so I've had Tracy do the virtual author visits. Indian No More, which she helped finish, was the Global Read Aloud pick for 2021. And so I got to connect with her because she lives, just down the road. Just like an incredible author and like really wonderful woman.
Truly. And I mean, like she walks her talk, truly. She is so active, like in the community and supporting. I mean, at the time when I met her, like she was a friend of my husband's family, and he actually recorded We Are Grateful for her audiobook. So he was on there. I think he was 16 or 17.
What small.
Yeah.
My students, when I was teaching, so we used We Are Grateful every November, and we would do the Tree of Life, and I would teach, we would do like I always have a land acknowledgement posted outside the library, and like talking about the fact that the school sits on Cherokee land, and like talking about like speaking Cherokee and learning each other's language. And my school was very like 80% Spanish speaking. And so like taking the time to respect each other's language and learn it, and like such a cool. And so they've heard him because they've heard the audio.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, what a like crazy 6 degrees of separation this is.
Yes.
Like, not even connecting the same faces and names, and
it's
what a delight.
What a treat. Yeah, no. I mean, and just, at the time, like she didn't have to read what I wrote, and she didn't have to, guide me. I mean, still today, I mean, there's times where I ask her questions. I'm actually going to go pick up some books from her on Thursday. But I mean, like, the way that she's able to... It's actually funny, though. I should have mentioned this earlier. But when I was first thinking about opening Palomino, I went to have dinner with her, I think pretty soon after. And I went into dinner like, okay, I'm going to tell her about my idea, and she will tell me if it's a bad idea or not. You know what I mean? Like, I know Tracy will tell me everything that, she will just lay it out for me. And I told her, and she was just like, yeah, I'm really excited for you. And I got a text from her the next morning that was like, I just woke up, feeling, really happy for you. And I was like, if Tracy says it's good, then it's a good idea. I was like, okay, more of the stars aligning,
I love it. It's so funny how we expect our friends and family, like, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Like my parents, who have always been like, are you sure about that? With a lot of things, I told them I was opening a bookstore, and they were like, perfect. How can we help?
Yeah,
we love it. Tell us what we need to do. And then they did it, and they like helped paint and helped build the shelves, and like watch the children while we were in here working our butts off, and work the shop when we were like, yes, we have overcommitted ourselves. It's the nature of being a performance family is very like, oh no, the calendar is not aligned. And, at the very beginning, we weren't in a place to have booksellers. Now we have a lot more flexibility in our schedule, but like, the people that come through and support, especially like people are like, I trust this voice. They have experience in the book world. And I'm like, Palomino Books has been blessed by Tracy Sorrell. So
there we go. I wanna I should add that to our vinyl outside. Blessed by Tracy Sorrell. We got the stamp of approval. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. That's so fun. So that's something that, like going through your website, the selection that you have has a really wonderful focus on like Spanish and Indigenous voices. So is that like a thread that you'll find throughout it, or are you?
Yeah, I think definitely. And I mean mostly because that's the experience, the lived experience of me and Agali Sikh, I will say on our website, I'm still trying to figure out on Square how to make everything Google acceptable. I'm like, what is this measurement? I feel like I've added every picture and every price and every description, and it's still some of it just it does not meet their guidelines.
Yeah. I make something visible and Square's like, that's not going to be visible, and I'm like, I need the link for it now
to work today.
Square's like, I don't know, girlie.
I don't believe that you really want that out there. I don't trust. But no, that's definitely like the thread that's, I think, going to be strong. I mean, even just physically, like the bookshelves, like those two are probably the most full, right now. Mm-hmm. But I think also trying to, I have a shelf currently that I'm thinking of, because right now I'm curating a small section of this shop for our Thursday. We're going to have a Thursday like pop up from 5 to 8, just like a little taste of Palomino. But I have one that I've just called Oklahoma, and it's everything either based in Oklahoma that I have by an Oklahoma author, or what I'm saying folks in Oklahoma might ought to read. So things that might talk about like rural lived experience and things that folks can relate to, or like race and gender issues and that sort of thing. So yeah, just again, it's sometimes it's just become like, what do I like? What do I want to do?
And what I'll say is like your aunt probably has said the same thing. But there is, for all the training and all of the background knowledge and all of the, trade publications telling you what's hot, there is so much weight behind, would I read this?
Yeah.
And if I would read it, especially like it seems like you're a pretty wide reader, a pretty open-minded reader. If it's something that speaks to me, I'm not a unique special snowflake. Someone else is going to want to read.
Yeah.
That. And I have been right about it every single time.
Yes.
I have put something on the shelf and there's been at least 2 or 3 people that are like, yeah,
I'll take that.
That sounds like exactly what I want to read.
Yes.
I thought the same thing when I picked it. For the most part, it's stuff like, most of the stuff on the shelf we've read that author. And so we're like very confident in it. But a lot of it is like, oh, well, I needed something else for the shelf that hit like mystery or thriller, or, somebody really wanted poetry. And I'm like, well, I would read that book. So I'll buy it and then maybe some else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like there's been genres that, I know that I'm not as familiar with, like sci-fi. Like I don't find myself reading a ton of sci-fi, and I'm getting recommendations from like family and other folks, and I've had people like handwrite me lists of things that they've read or would like to read, and so that's been really helpful. And then it's also led me to things that like, okay, maybe that selection, it would be something kind of totally left field for me as a reader, but it's also led me to things that are right up my alley, and so I do have like a blend of some of the more like popular stuff. Like I have Heated Rivalry, of course. Duh. But I also like right next to it have like another option that, if you do like Heated Rivalry, you might like Futbolista, which is like another queer sports story, So again, circling back to, if you like this, you might like what I like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it's huge, and that's, because I can only reheat so many times.
Yeah.
Which, like, the limit doesn't exist, but eventually I do want to, like, bump up my numbers on the story graph. So,
yeah.
Time to pick something else.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. And that's, the same vibe of, like, we carry, Fourth Wing and ACOTAR, all those romanticises. But then I'm also like, oh, well, if that's something that you enjoyed or that you're interested in, let me point you to, like, Dragonblind by Amon Christians, which is, like, I like better than Fourth Wing, and you might also.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right where you're supposed to be, like, in terms of selection.
Mhm.
And you're going to get, especially like working in the store, you're going to get even more familiar with like what your specific community is reading, what the people who are going to be walking by, you know, with the farmers market, getting a feel for like what's going to be really popular and what they're looking for and
Yeah.
need as you go through. So I think you've got a really good sense for it. I want to circle back into, you mentioned that you and your husband are Cherokee language educators.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about like how that came about, and then how we can expect to see that in Palomino, because just from my own experience, we're going to see that
Yeah.
evolve into and impact the bookstore in some way. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, that part of our lives is really essential and is absolutely going to show up in Palomino in various ways. I'm hoping to get some more actual like Cherokee, specifically like board books and stuff, because I know that there's a lot of families who are trying to teach the language to their children, and there's not a ton of Cherokee language books out there. You know, I have seen that Barefoot Books does like a Navajo selection. So Barefoot Books, if you're listening, we need Cherokee books too. But yeah, I really got started in the language through my husband. He grew up going to the Cherokee Nation immersion school from when he was 3. His parents have been really involved in language preservation and culture. And 2 of his grandparents are Cherokee speakers. So he's very grounded in the language and the culture. And when I came, I deal with a lot of, or have dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome in my upbringing, just because, like, you know, they say like, yeah, like being from like a mixed status family, and also just like having this kind of dual identity, it can be a little bit hard to manage sometimes, or you kind of feel like, what am I really? You know, you ask yourself a lot of questions. But I knew that with our children, I wanted them to be like very grounded in place and who they are and where they come from. And so for me, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to obviously like move to Oklahoma, and if he wants them to, you know, learn the language, so do I. They're also we have 2 little boys. They're learning Spanish as well, you know, but I was like, I have to learn Cherokee as best as I can. You know, that was one way I kind of surprised him, actually, as I started taking very early in our relationship, Ed Fields's online class. And I was like, look, I got my first certificate. And I was very proud of that, you know. Cherokee 1 passed. But then he went into the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice program, and he graduated, and their focus at the language center now, the Durham Feeling Language Center out in Tahlequah, one of their focuses, they have many, but one priority is building language families. So they have children who they're teaching the language to, so it can be carried on, and trying to build speakers as young as possible, so they can also pick up on those like cultural nuances and that sort of thing. Because as a second language learner, it is hard. That's a whole nother thing you have to learn, you know. I think people forget with like heritage languages specifically, like in any language, world language too, but there is that kind of extra level of understanding you have to have. And it's almost like you're even translating a whole different understanding of English. Like, there's the English you speak, there's the English they speak as, you know, second language learners of English, but you're trying to get to the Cherokee. It's this complicated learning process. And especially with a language too that's been like intentionally like bogged down, and essentially, you know, folks try to get rid of Cherokee. But I went, and I also did the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice program for a year. And then there was an opportunity to go to a pilot program, which is like Cherokee Language Master Apprentice, or CLMAP is the acronym, but specifically with the goal of making early childhood language teachers. And so I did that for another year, and then I moved into a mixed age classroom full time, and that's what I've been doing since. I now have 2 to 4 year olds, and that is really fun. One of them being my own son, which can be tricky. Yay, I think he's adjusted, that, mom is a teacher too, and but it was definitely tricky at first. And my husband, he was an educator at the school. He was specifically a cultural teacher because he still carries a lot of like ceremonial knowledge. And so he was doing that for a while. And now he is working specifically on resources for other parents who are trying to teach their children the language, just like we are. So I really see it coming through in Palomino in hopefully translated books in the future. I would love to have a lot of like resources and materials to give folks, but also we do plan on doing Cherokee language courses because we know there's not a ton of those available in Tulsa. I think a lot of at least the Cherokee Nation's efforts is like in the smaller communities or like more predominantly Cherokee communities, or like Tahlequah and those places, which is awesome. But I know that there's some people who maybe live here for work or are going to school who still want to learn, and maybe they're not at the university, they're not a college student. They want to, learn in another setting. So we'd love to offer that eventually. And I think we will. I've been trying to convince my husband to be the teacher for a little bit. We've both learned that I don't know if I like teaching adults. I think he's better at it, but I think because, I just trying to teach an adult anything is really difficult.
It's a different skill set.
Yes.
It's not one I possess.
Yeah, me neither.
I can teach an elementary student all day long.
Yep.
I can teach. I teach improv occasionally
Oh, wow.
at TU, in conjunction with their public speaking program, and I'm like, wow, that's it's also challenging to like ask a 19-year-old to play sit-ups up with you at 9:30. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't choose this schedule for you, but this is the reality. Just go with it.
Yeah.
But so definitely a skill set. So if he's got it.
Yeah. I think he's definitely better at it. And so I'm trying to bring him in and to offer something. But yeah, it's definitely going to be there. And I think probably initially more with like the performance because he'll be performing there, and we're hoping to have some other folks who've done other Cherokee language songs or art there as well. So yeah, it'll be alive and well for sure.
It's so beautiful. I think Tulsa needs more bookstores. Tulsa needs more Indigenous owned stores. Tulsa always needs more women owned stores. So I excited to see where it takes you. I'm gonna wrap it with my final question that I ask everybody, which is, what has been in your literary journey? So from writing a book to publication to bookstore, very broad for you especially. What has been something you found particularly interesting or surprising throughout that?
What haven't I? I think like from the author side, I think just how this is like a very, kind of, I feel like it's a boring answer, but it really surprised me how, like me and Abe in our collaboration, quote unquote, wasn't really a collaboration. You know what I mean? We're kept very separate during the process, which at first I was like, what's going on? You know what I mean? But learning now how intentional that is, because when you let an illustrator who knows what they're doing, take your words and make something beautiful of it, like what a treat is that? You know what I mean? And I think like, in my bookstore journey, it's very much like me curating and having that like control and agency that I'm enjoying, getting to pick books and buy things. But in my author journey, how rewarding it's been to like let people take my story and run with it, like whether it be the illustrator or the publisher or a reader. I had someone do an interview with me from Ohio. I am not going to say the university because there's like Ohio State and Ohio University, and I can't remember which one it was. if she's listening. She did an amazing interview with me. And she took Popo and she analyzed it from like a gender studies perspective, and how the grandma in the book was basically like her role, and how it could be critique through a lens of like feminist literature and like expectations specifically on like Mexican women and their families. And I was like, what? Which, yes, I was like, really? Like
the curtains for that reason?
for my, you got that from Popo, like, which was not what I was necessarily intending to come from it, but I totally saw what she saw, and it was so cool to see what people make of your stories or what you have to offer to the world, whether it be like my book or his music, what people make of it for themselves. You know what I mean? And
I love that. That's such a, I've been thinking a lot about that kind of literary analysis, and like writing a book, because I've got a novella out, and then like I learned so much from writing that, but I'm like approaching my writing from a literary analysis perspective, and I'm like, I don't like doing that. Because like realizing when I'm critiquing things, I'm reading them from a very academic perspective, and like taking, like a gender studies like approach to it. And that the reality is that most of the time we're not writing like that. We're not writing with, oh yes, I am writing the grandmother as, holding all of this cultural expectation in this character. I'm just writing my grandmother. But the reality is that I am unintentionally writing her with all that I understand of an elderly woman's role in this perspective. And so in like that regard, like writing with a literary analysis perspective of it is like very annoying and pretentious. And I'm glad that I don't like doing it, because I think I would write something that I would then hate myself. But I think you're right. Like letting it be that interpretation, and like seeing how other people take your art is so neat. I also love, for anyone curious about conversations with Tracy Sorrell and I want to say Frenae Russell, but I know that's probably not right. But they talked a lot about the illustration process and about how they had to be kept separated. And like Tracy letting go of her writing to allow Frenae to create visual art out of her written art, which is super cool. So glad to see that it's like a common theme that people are like, oh no, I have to let go of my words. And then see something really beautiful come out of it. So so
it was definitely something I think I needed to, because then, it is just nice, like practically, like to be able to just let it go for a while, and then whenever we get the sketches, then it comes back and I'm like reunited with it again, because then I can live my life or write new things, or I had 2 babies in the time that Popo was being published, and I'm not over here. It's nice to not have so much control over something sometimes, just like let it be. And
that is also the super big benefit of getting to be traditionally published. It's a conversation I've had with a lot of our authors, is like, do you end up trying to query a book and go the traditional publishing route, or do you go ahead and be self-published, because you have so much control over self-publishing? And like when I self-published, like it was largely because I was ready to be done with the story. And so I was like, I don't want to spend years trying to get this book out. I'm ready for it to just exist, a physical manifestation of all of the work that I put into it, and let it go. And so I can really focus on doing something else. But it did mean like I'm the cover designer and the marketer, and I had to find people to edit my book and to beta read it. And whereas like you had to do the hard work of like getting a book traditionally published, but then once that was there, it was like, all right, now let someone else illustrate it, and Charles Bridge can market it, and I will just be responsible for having written it, and letting it market the way that Charles Bridge wants me to market it.
Yes, and answering the emails when I do get them. You know what I mean? Like, just, does this look okay? Yes, cool. There we go. Yeah.
I love that. That's such a thank you for like bringing a little bit of that world into it, because it's not a conversation we get to have a lot, because the self-publishing world is massive.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people that come on here are doing some form of self-publication, or maybe like a hybrid. So if you want to check out Palomino Books, they will be officially open July 1st.
Yes.
July 1st over in the Kendall-Whittier district on Admiral Boulevard, Kendall-Whittier Main Street. It's going to be a really exciting time. Just social media has been looking beautiful. And I'm so excited for you. Welcome to the Tulsa bookseller community.
Thank you. Yay.
Thank you so much for coming on to Absolutely Girl. And thank you so much for listening. And we will yap about books with you next time.
Yay.